This is Ed Rep Radio, presented by Eastman Music Company. This is Ed Rep Radio, a podcast to bring you ideas and information from industry experts you can use on the road every day. Presented by Eastman Music Company, and I'm your host, Shane Duell. On this quick episode, I wanted to share a conversation with Adam Campagna, band director in the Chehalis School District in Chehalis, Washington. Talking with Amy D., who's an ed rep at Ted Brown Music, Amy told me about this recruiting idea that Mr. Campagna put together during COVID to recruit the next batch of beginners. It was a great idea, and I think you'll find it helpful during your recruiting efforts this year. And I think recruiting may not come back exactly the same as you knew it before. So even though this recruiting was during COVID, it may be something that's useful far into the future. Adam Campagna, thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here.
So we're here to talk about recruiting and what you did this year to bring in the next batch of beginners. But before we do that, I'd love to get to know you and your program. What's your teaching background?
Well, I've been teaching for 14 years. This is my 8th year in the Chehalis School District in Chehalis, Washington. And I'm currently the high school band director. And then I also help team teach. We converge. We have a unique setup here for our 5th graders, in that we all come together, and every 5th grader receives 5th grade music 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. And so they choose band, choir, or orchestra. And so all of our district music teachers come together and we divvy out the kids and all teach that. So that's a little bit about me and our program here.
Being the high school director, I imagine that you are your own feeder, so those students probably look forward to getting to know you in 5th grade and then seeing you again in high school. How does that affect retention?
I think it really helps. This year actually is unique in that this year's graduating senior class is the first class that I ever taught in the 5th grade when I started this job. And so it's really exciting to see them go through. And this is actually one of the bigger classes of students that I've had and kind of seen all the way through. I don't see them the middle school, obviously. We have another musical teacher. But I think it really helps in the long run because I get to share with them what we're doing at the high school when they're in 5th grade. And so they start hearing about the experiences and the trips and some of those things that they might get an opportunity to do if they, continue on at the high school level.
Yeah, so you get them excited at the first year of playing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great. So today is March 11th, 2001, and that's a substantial date because exactly a year ago, the World Health Organization declared COVID a worldwide pandemic, and everything changed for education. So I'd like to get to know what you did for recruiting before COVID, and what was your typical setup, and how many students would you start?
Yeah, so typically we would start in the late spring. Our middle school band, choir, and orchestra would come down to the 4th graders and would do a little preview concert to kind of show the kids what they could be doing. And they'd get a little bit of a conversation about some of their choices, band, choir, and orchestra, and the different instruments in those. And then come June, we'd also do typically a second concert where the 5th grade band, the current 5th grade band, would play for the 4th graders and would highlight again all of the beginning band instruments that they could play and voice choices. And then that would be followed up with an instrument petting zoo with our ed rep from our music store, where we would cycle the entire 4th grade class through in groups. And they'd get a chance to test out all of the instruments and kind of leave with an idea of what they might be interested in playing. And then that would be followed up with a parent meeting. We'd do 2 of those that parents could come to, one in the spring or one in the fall for those kids that maybe hadn't made a choice yet by the fall. And so between all of that, typically we would end up with about 100 out of a class that's usually about 250 kids strong, give or take.
Great.
And so really good, healthy numbers for our 5th graders, which is really awesome to see.
Yeah, certainly. And what was your ed rep's involvement with recruiting?
Before the pandemic, our ed rep was even more heavily involved in that they brought a whole staff of people down from the music store and would be the ones that would man the stations for the kids to try. And so it allowed us to get through a lot of kids in a short amount of time. And so it was a great benefit. And then they would have the information about rentals as well that they could have to look at and take home to their parents. So they were instrumental this new year as well with changes we had to make for COVID. It just looked a little bit different because nobody had ever done what we had to try to do this year with COVID. So
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So a year ago, the world of education changed completely. And I'm imagining that this year you didn't end up doing a petting zoo with everyone sharing a mouthpiece. So can you tell us about how you adapted to the regulations that are out there and how you brought in a new batch of students?
Yeah, so over the summer, we started hearing about, CDC recommendations and guidelines and state guidelines on what we could and couldn't do and what school might be looking like in the fall. And I started thinking about, okay, well, every fifth grader's got to do music. What's that going to look like? How are we going to do that? We didn't get to do the petting zoo. We didn't get to do our recruiting concert, all those things. And so I started throwing around the idea of what would it look like if we did kind of a drive-through a petting zoo. And so ultimately our district purchased a class set, essentially 30 sets or 30 units of the Jupiter mouthpiece kits that include the plastic flute head joint, the plastic clarinet mouthpiece with a plastic reed, and then a brass mouthpiece with both a rubber trumpet-sized cup and a trombone-sized cup. And we kind of set up a drive-through where kids could sign up for a time, and they'd drive up, socially distanced from other kids, and they'd come up and get to try all the different mouthpieces. Once they left, if they were like, hey, I want to play trumpet, our ed rep was there to answer any questions and to sign them up right there for a rental. It worked really, really slick. And so they could leave that thing. One of the other benefits that I really took away from this was that the parent got to be there as the kid tried the mouthpieces. When we did the instrument petting zoo during the school day, the kids tried them, and they got a slip of paper that said, this is my favorite instrument. But in this case, the parent was right there with the kid and could see the kid, when they had that success, whether that was, getting a tone to blow on the flute head joint, or it was a great buzz, beginner's buzz on the trumpet. And so there was definitely some benefits because the parents could ask their questions right then and there about we had questions about lessons, we had questions about rentals and books and all sorts of stuff. And it was just a great first contact right off the bat to get these kids excited and their parents excited and invested in the program and their kids' education. So
yeah, that's a great point about the parents. They oftentimes will hear from their student that the student wants to play in band, but initially, at least, the parent doesn't really know much about it. So do you feel like by having the parents there and you're able to answer the questions, that you were to put them at ease a little bit and show that, yeah, you can do band, see your student just made a sound? How do you think that really affected the parents' perspective there?
I think I really do think it was a positive overall. Before this, the first time we would see the parent, typically, if they didn't come to the meeting, would be when they picked up their instrument. And so then they might have a question or two that we could answer. But by that point, the student already has the instrument picked out and they've got it. So choices have been made. And so in this case, it was great. It was fun to hear. Some parents obviously played music themselves when they were kids. And so we got to hear that. And that was fun, I think, for their kids to hear too, that, mom or dad played a clarinet or a trumpet or whatever it might be. And I really do think it helped to answer questions. And especially this year, everybody wanted things to return to normal as much as we could, even though we knew things couldn't be normal as they were before. And so this, I think, even though it was a modified version of what we did, I think it really helped create that sense of everything doesn't have to stop and go away during what was it's been a crazy year for everybody.
Sure has. Yeah, and you felt like there was some good energy, it sounds like, with the parents and the students, that they're excited to start band.
It was, and in full disclosure, before this year, I wasn't involved directly in the petting zoo. That was our middle school director usually. I'd seen little bits and pieces and I think stopped by, but wasn't there for the full day. But my experience with this was so good that I've, told the rest of the district music staff that I'm happy to help and plan it and run it every year. I just thought, again, the energy of the event was so good. And, we had over 50% of the class participate on a year that we had no idea if we'd get any kids to show up. We had no clue. And so it worked out really, really well. The final piece, I guess I forgot to mention that we sent them home with was a link to a Google form we had created that had them answer some questions about, they knew what they wanted to play. They had an instrument they didn't. So on a teacher side, it really helped us. When first day of school came, we were able to really figure out who was supposed to be where, who we needed to follow up with on who didn't have an instrument. So it was an excellent tool in the kit as well.
Great. So it sounds like you were almost forced into a different way of recruiting this year, but by doing so, you've learned a few things that you really liked, and you'll be applying it to next year, even when you could have a little bit more freedom in the format in which you recruit.
Absolutely. I mean, I think going forward, I see this as a go-to. I think the benefit, we'll definitely want to bring back the recruiting concert, because I think it's important for the kids to see what the fifth graders sound like. So, hey, this is where I can be in a year, but also the middle schoolers visiting it's the top band and choir and orchestra from the middle school. So they can see, here's what I can be doing in 4 years time, if I work at this and I'm committed to this. And so I think those elements will definitely come back as soon as we can. But in terms of the petting zoo portion, I thought the benefits of having it outside and using the mouthpiece kits was huge. Having the parents there, it was just such a benefit for us and the program overall.
That's great. Really appreciate you sharing what you did. And I'm wondering if you were to give some advice to ed reps out there throughout the country. Some ed reps are very involved with recruiting, some are a little less. What advice would you give to an ed rep to support a teacher in their recruiting efforts?
Yeah, I think, just being there, asking your teachers, how you can help. One of the biggest things that I've loved about the ed reps that I've had the pleasure of working with over the years is that they all just work to make that connection with the teachers that they're working with. I've never felt like the ed reps came to us and it was a transactional thing and they were providing a service for us. It felt like somebody that really cared about the kids and the programs. And in our ed rep, shout out to Amy D and everybody else at Ted Brown Music. They're there and will do whatever they can physically do for us to help us and have our programs be successful. And it's just so helpful and nice to know that we have that support behind us.
Thank you. That's great advice for ed reps. Adam Campagna, we really appreciate your time, and we wish you luck in the rest of your school year, and we hope that the next school year looks a lot more normal.
Thank you so much for having me, and we're hoping the same thing here as well.
All right. Take care.
Take care.
We hope you found the information presented in this episode useful and something you can use in your everyday life as an ed rep. If there's a topic that you would like to learn more about and have presented here on Ed Rep Radio, or would like to give us some feedback in general, please drop us an email at edrepradio@eastmanstrings.com. Thanks for joining us, and drive safe.